Hello there. If you can't tell by the image that accompanies this video, this movie was horrible. As most of you know who have watched my channel for some time, I typically try to find some redeeming qualities in a film, and I look to, grasp onto something and say, hey, this filmmaker took their time, effort, and energy to craft and create this piece of art to give to the general public. This was a movie that I can't say I was excited to see by any means, but I enjoy the found footage genre and I get a lot out of those movies. This being from filmmaker Rob Savage, who was talked about immensely for his work on the film Host, which I watched and found pretty underwhelming for the most part. It had some neat visual effects, and the fact that it was shot during COVID, obviously they used the limitation of the filming space and the budget to their advantage by focusing more on the effects. But one of the most irritating parts of the film was that none of the people filming this event had any reason to continue to film the event. They should have all shut their laptops and ran out of the room. It's hard to suspend your disbelief for something so stupid, whereas you look at a film like the Creep franchise where there's a reason for it, or Hell House LLC, or the Blair Witch Project, or so many incredible found footage films that there's a reason that the camera keeps rolling. I was so irritated by that, I couldn't get past it even to enjoy like some of the quick visual gimmicks. So this was also a film shot during the pandemic, and it's a film that was pandemic centric, and this was not only the worst film of the year, but this is one of the worst movies I've ever seen. I'm gonna get into it more into the review, but yeah, I'm not gonna have a lot of nice things to say about this movie. Dashcam is directed by Rob Savage. Kirk Cameron returns in this horror debut. He's saved Christmas, he's saved his marriage, and now he's going to save you from the coronavirus pandemic by telling you you're a slave to the mask, making fun of mass movements, marginalized groups of people, utilizing religion and a conservative background to personally attack and abuse groups of people who don't deserve it. Kirk Cameron wants to remind us all that Jesus is the reason for the season. That's not the real description of the movie, but boy, that was fun to say. So I want to get the first thing out of the way, which, there's going to be people who enjoyed this movie who are going to come on here and say, oh, this liberal left-wing guy is just going to attack this movie because of the fact that the lead character is a conservative nut job. So I'm going to get this out of the way. The lead character is a conservative nut job. And not only is she a conservative nut job in the movie, she's a conservative nut job in real life. And what drives me nuts is, and what I don't understand, there's so many incredible people in the horror community. There's a ton of people in the LGBTQIA community. There's a ton of people of color, Black people, Asian people, there's Indian people, there's people from all walks of life that have these incredible backgrounds and things that have formed them to be these wonderful people who, because of the conservative Christian community, have been marginalized and treated like shit. So I don't understand why we would ever, as people in the horror community, want to tout a film that literally has a lead character that their entire political party's platform is spent putting those people's lives in danger and making them feel unsafe and unwelcome. That part of the movie made it almost impossible for me to want to watch, because this person, the problem I have with it is this movie's 70 minutes long. The first half hour of this film is literally them just spewing conservative garbage about how Corona is not real, that you're a slave to a mask. She goes to Europe to meet this guy who she used to make music with, who she constantly is referring to his girlfriend as like feminist nightmare, makes these comments about the Black Lives Matter movement, says all this crazy shit. And so I'm watching this movie and I'm like, okay, Rob Savage is going to use this person, tout them as this insane human being so that they get their just desserts at the end. And there'll be some kind of like redeeming, hey, this person sucks. But you don't even fucking get that at the end of the film. You don't get, she's fine. Like, what is so confusing is It felt like this movie was just a platform for this person to spew their garbage to people. And there's not even really a plot. This movie has no plot, regardless of, ooh, they had a limited budget and they used it to show someone floating in the background. Who gives a shit when the plot of the movie is so terrible? So we've gotten that out of the way, that she's a conservative nut job. She's spewing this garbage that's going to be harmful to groups of people, spreading misinformation, which she's not even just acting, she is that in real life, which makes it even worse. So now we've gotten that out of the way. So now let's talk about why the movie fucking sucks. So, the movie starts, you're introduced to this character. She's driving around in her car, beatboxing horribly and making terrible music that sounds pretty much the equivalent of me sticking my hand in a garbage disposal and turning it on. And so she's doing this live stream thing, which the movie doesn't even really comprehend the idea of like Facebook or Instagram or YouTube live streaming. So she gets in her car and she's driving around and she's spewing on about coronavirus and she's filming people with masks on. And so all of a sudden she decides, I'm going to go do this in Europe. So she's in California. She leaves California to go to Europe and stay with her friend, who I have no fucking idea why her friend would want her to be there anyway, because she's a nuisance and she's like literally the most obnoxious human being I've ever seen in a film, period. So she arrives to Europe, goes into the apartment, wakes him up in the middle of the night by like spitting on her hand and smacking him in the face. He gets up and she starts driving around with him during the day while he's doing like Uber orders, because the coronavirus has stopped him from being a touring musician. He can't make money anymore like a lot of touring musicians across the world weren't able to. And she, of course, causes problems by going into the restaurants with him with no masks on. She gets cussed out constantly, and for some reason he doesn't just say, hey, fuck off, get out of here. He lets her keep doing it. Who the fuck knows why? It makes no sense. So one night he goes back and gets into it with his girlfriend, and she goes to throw her out, and she steals their car and his phone for some fucking reason and starts doing his Uber Eats orders. I don't know why. There's literally no reason for it. She goes to a restaurant, which is clearly closed. This woman comes out and says, hey, will you do me a favor, out of nowhere, and says, will you drive this person to this location? And she's like, no, I'm not going to do it. And she goes to the back, and the woman's like covered in blood or something. I don't even remember. Who fucking cares? But she's like, oh my God, I'm not going to do it. And she runs out, and the lady runs out of the restaurant and hands her what appears to be a very large sum of money. The next scene is her loading her into the car, and the rest of the movie is them just driving in the car and supernatural things happening surrounding this woman that was picked up in the car while she yells conservative propaganda. And it literally, that's the movie. There's nothing else. It has no sustenance. There's no reason to investigate why something creepy is going on, because you don't care. There's no weight held emotionally. Because when you make a movie, and this is basic screenwriting, even if you have a character who is incredibly unlikable, like a character that you can't stand, every great horror movie, great action movie, adventure movie, take for instance a classic movie like Die Hard. Hans Gruber is a horrible villain. He's terrible, but the thing is, he's charismatic. He's interesting. He has something that makes you continue to want to watch the film. There's a reason for wanting to watch these movies. You have a character like Dexter Morgan, who's a serial murderer, but that's trying to use his serial killing for the greater good of humanity. And so you have this parallel as a viewer of, well, he's not necessarily doing things the right way, but you sympathize for him because of why he's doing it. And so there's this dichotomy for you as the viewer of, wow, I care about this person. This lead character is the most obnoxious, awful human who does not care about other people. She's just mean and thinks that she should be successful for no reason at all. There's no reason. She's not talented at music. She's not talented at live streaming. So why would you care? And then her friend is clearly a moron because he brings her in and is just like, I'll let her ruin my life and my financial income. And so when they go out and all this stuff starts happening, you just don't give a shit because she's a terrible person, and you just want her to be killed off in the movie anyway, because every time she speaks, it's nauseating. And that's what drove me nuts. None of the effects are really that impressive. Like, I read some reviews that people were like, like hyping this up as such an incredible found footage film. There's like a car accident scene where someone comes through the front windshield and it's like, oh yeah, it's visceral. Okay, when you're utilizing a super small budget and you're filming in the middle of nowhere, it's not that hard to utilize your budget towards visual effects. It's not really that impressive. There's like a scene where she's standing outside and a lady just starts floating. Great. There's been so many incredible movies with better visual effects. And then our lead character running around yelling, shit in my mouth, cum in my ass. Like, who cares? No one gives a shit. Your character's not even funny. And that's the problem. They like touted her as this comical, eccentric person that you're just supposed to excuse the fact that she's been laying on this rhetoric the entire film. And then the other problem I have with this movie, the shaky cam is nauseating. And I've watched so much found footage films in my life. I watched a found footage film a while back that an independent filmmaker made. It's called The Land of Blue Lakes. It's super low budget. It was all shot on a cell phone, and it was some of the most gorgeous imagery. Even the scenes that were chaotic, it was stable enough for you to understand what's going on. You look at a movie like The Blair Witch Project, it's got some stuff. Or you look at like a big cultural phenomenon movie like Paranormal Activity. The Steadicam in that movie, or even like the VHS cameras, are steady enough for you to see what's going on. This is shaking like nonsense to where your head is just like, oh my God, I can't even look. And then that gives the filmmaker an excuse to jump from location to location to location because it's been so nauseating how the person gets from one place to another. You're just supposed to piece this together in your head and say, well, okay, they've been running and we don't really know where they would run to because they're like outside on a street. Then she ends up in an abandoned amusement park somehow where all the doors are still unlocked and they can go everywhere. Then they end up at this random house. They end up in like a lot somewhere and you're just like, okay, well, they're going from point A to point B because this is where we had the ability to shoot. And so that's irritating too, where it's like it's a 70-minute runtime. They're jumping place to place to place. And it's almost just like, well, we had the access to this place during COVID and we shot here. So deal with it, I guess. Some of the visual effects are neat to look at. But the thing is, that doesn't redeem this movie from being a garbage film that literally has no sustenance. You don't leave feeling anything other than sick. There's one other thing I want to address because I know I'm ranting, but it's been a long time since a movie has made me this mad and irritated that it even exists. There's a scene, and like I said, despite all the conservative propaganda that made me want to turn this off in the first fucking 5 minutes anyway, her friend Stretch, who just had his car stolen, finds her because he tracks the phone and gets in the car. Well, she gets out of the car and runs at one point, and the lady in the back seat starts doing some crazy shit because that's the only part of the movie that's even interesting. He, for some reason, decides to pick up the camera and start filming the stuff. For what? Like, it's not your show. You don't care that it's going on, so why the fuck are you picking it up and filming? There would be no reason. You could say that maybe he needed a phone to contact someone, but he would not continue live streaming on the app if he needed to get a hold of help because there's something going on. So it really just makes no sense. And if you liked this movie, I'm sorry, I guess. Like, you can leave me a comment and try to justify why you liked this horrible piece of garbage, but like, there really isn't any visual effects that are that impressive. The lady turns into a monster at the end of the movie, and it's such shaky cam footage that you only catch like little glimpses of how it looks. And there's 1,000 films in the past 20 years that have used practical effects way better than this movie. And yeah, Rob Savage, man, like, just think about things next time. Don't give morons a platform to spew their misinformation when we just lived in a country where for 4 years we had a guy mock marginalized groups of people, mock a disabled person on live television, constantly use racist rhetoric, and you got the lead character of your film touting a Make America Great Again hat. What are you trying to do, man? You didn't say anything negative about it. How do you justify this shit? Because it's really infuriating. as a member of the LGBTQ community and as a person who cares very deeply for other people, stop giving fucking idiots like this platforms to speak out because they don't deserve it. Have you seen Dashcam? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Leave me a comment down below and let me know what you thought. I'm very heated about this film. I was very frustrated because I feel like there's so many members of marginalized groups of people in this world who have been negatively affected by conservative rhetoric and by people who don't want them to be able to live their life safely. And it's hard for me as a person who looks at film critically and someone who loves the horror community. It's my life. It's my passion. I love horror movies. To find justification as to why you would give a person like this a platform to spew their nonsense. As always, if you're not sick of me bitching already, you can like the video and subscribe to the channel. I love making content. Typically, I review movies I enjoy talking about. Hell, my other least favorite film of the year, Firestarter, did not even annoy me this much. So if you want to check out more of my content, feel free to like the video and subscribe to the channel. As always, everyone, thank you so much for watching and have a great rest of your day.